Match pie. Match! In this video, you're going to learn what your chickens want you to know about chicken etiquette so you can have a better relationship with them, you can have a more peaceful flock, and you can stop accidentally being an asshole without even knowing it. But first, what you're not going to learn about in this video, and this may really surprise you because this is what most people think about when they think about chicken etiquette, but what you're not going to learn about is the pecking order. Because although that's a very popular concept in the backyard world, pecking order theory was actually developed on chickens who were badly mistreated and living in abhorrent conditions. In most cases, for example, chickens were being starved and they were literally fighting for their survival. But why would researchers do that to them? Because that's the only way they could get them all to peck each other. The chickens were too peaceful otherwise and weren't forming the hierarchy the researchers wanted them to form. If you're interested in learning more about the truth of pecking order theory, how messed up it is, how it doesn't apply to chickens living in more natural conditions, what a better social theory for chickens is, please let me know in the comments below and I'll put a video together. But for today, we're going to talk about how chickens who aren't being tortured by mad scientists actually learn to live quite peacefully together based on 12 of the fundamental rules of chicken etiquette. Let's get started with rule number 1, play it cool. If you come on too strong with your chickens, you'll scare them away. And most of us, when we first get started with chickens, are coming on way too strong. So let me show you what that looks like. This body language is all wrong. You see my body squared off, facing the chickens straight on. I'm staring at them, again, straight on. My eyes are open and bright, and that's intense. If you are already closely bonded with your chickens, you can be this intense. They'll be very comfortable with that. But if your chickens are skittish at all, if they don't trust you, if the bond's not there yet, this is rude. You wouldn't want a stranger or someone you don't trust well using this body language on you either. It'd be creepy. And it's creepy for chickens too, even amongst themselves. There was actually a study done that showed that chickens who aren't closely bonded with all the other chickens living in the same space, they don't face each other straight on. They only do that defensively, which means not only is this not polite, it's threatening. Chicken etiquette instead requires a softer approach. So instead of this, you do this. You face them sideways, you look at them from the side and with soft eyes, and you approach them in a disinterested manner. Speed also plays a role here. A slower approach is always going to be more polite than a fast approach. Rule number 2, no grabbing. This is impolite. And in fact, it's also threatening.
That was rude, wasn't it?
A chicken's natural instinct is going to be to always run away from reaching arms or grabbing hands. Chickens obviously don't have hands, but they have feet that grasp like hands, and they only use these feet on other chickens aggressively by lunging out with their talons. There really is no polite way to use feet on another chicken. Additionally, reaching and grabbing is something predators do to prey, so all around this is rude, if not downright scary. However, there is an exception to this rule. If you are both closely bonded to your chickens and you've habituated them to this motion, you can pick them up that way all day and they'll take no issue with it. But for most of us and for most chickens, bad manners. Speaking of bonding and habituating chickens, there actually is a really easy way to do that. All you have to do is follow rule number 3. chicks must have mamas. In the chicken world, the law of the land is maternal care. This is a piece of wisdom that's been somewhat lost with domestication, one of those ancient secrets of Mother Nature that we are rediscovering in our backyard world. We've instead been led to believe in the modern world that chicks take care of themselves. As long as we give them heat, food, and shelter, all their needs are taken care of. But that's bad etiquette. In the chicken world, baby chicks are expected to have constant maternal care, and the research science is so clear that when chicks are deprived of maternal care, as they often are in our home brooders, they don't turn out as well. So specifically, chicks with no mama are more fearful, they are less active and exploratory, they eat less, they dust bathe less, they sleep less, they perch later, they're more aggressive, and perhaps saddest of all, they are less capable of strong bonding. So what can we do if we don't have mother hens to raise our chicks? Well, we can spend lots of time with them.
Did you come up again?
Take that role of maternal figure ourselves
She keeps climbing up. It's so cute.
and raise them in a brooder with lots of enrichment toys.
You worked it so cute up there. You want back down? I don't want you jumping too high. There you go. She made it. Over there.
I have a whole video course on this. I'll link to it below, but it's especially important that we spend as much time as we possibly can with our chicks in their first 1 to 2 days of life, because that's when they imprint on a mother figure. Imprinting is a biological process that can only happen in the first couple days of life, and it's a benchmark in development that most domesticated chicks are never allowed to reach. But if you do imprint your chicks on you, they'll not only get many of the benefits that chicks get who are raised by a mother hen, such as being less fearful, being less aggressive, having stronger social bonds, but they'll also be tame from day one. Rule number 4, cry wolf. When chickens are part of a flock, they always warn each other about potential danger. Now, most of these warnings are false alarms, but because everything eats chicken, every chicken needs to be vocal if they so much as even smell a hint of a threat.
Mr. Man.
Quiggles right now hears an airplane. You gonna stop now? I've been waiting for him to stop to continue filming, but I realized it fits in perfectly in this section.
Yeah? Are you telling everyone?
Many people will claim that chickens actually make a different noise for aerial predators than they do for ground predators, and that claim is based on research, but I'm going to challenge that assumption in another video. But what you can know for sure is that the intensity and volume of an alarm call directly correspond with the amount of danger. So quieter, more hesitant noises have a meaning of watch out, something might be out there, be on alert. There's a hawk that flew over. It was really, really high. So he was warning them, but it wasn't that loud of a warning because it was far enough off and it was just going in a line, so that wasn't really worth screaming about, but it was worth taking notice over. Quiggles, you're really helping me with this video today. You're a good boy. Very loud, repetitive, intense noises have a meaning of run for your life. And then there's a whole slew of noises and meanings in between. Rule number 5, be a hero. Chickens who have close social bonds will often be willing to sacrifice their lives to save their friends. This is especially true of roosters and mothers, but you'll find plenty of stories of heroic everyday hens as well who will do anything to save a friend. But being heroic doesn't always mean fighting off a predator. Back during my first year raising chickens, I had this rooster named Champ, and I remember something happened that really scared the flock. It was a false alarm. I think a tarp flapped loudly in the wind or something like that, but it put the chickens into full-on freak-out mode. And my rooster Champ during this time was screaming his head off with alarm calls, and he ran dramatically from the back of the house where the flock was at all the way around to the front of the house, leaving the hens behind. And I thought, wow, what a coward. If there really was a predator here, the hens would be dead, Champ would be alive, and it's kind of the opposite behavior of what people tell you roosters do. But I was actually completely mistaken, because one of the ways that roosters protect hens is by drawing the attention of predators away from the hens and leading them away from the flock. So by screaming their heads off and running away. And in fact, that's the appropriate action for a rooster to take before a flock is ever attacked. That is the way he can prevent an attack. It's only when an attack is imminent that a rooster should really fight a predator. So I guess the lesson I learned there was always think twice before passing harsh judgment on a chicken. They are so much smarter than we give them credit for.
Like some tea?
Rule number 6, announce yourself. Do you know why roosters crow? Truthfully, there are many, many reasons why roosters crow, but there does seem to be one reason that is primary, and that is for conflict avoidance. Roosters are crowing every day, all day long, to let roosters and other flocks know where they are. So in your backyard setting today, crowing might be somewhat obsolete, but it's still part of that instinctual jungle heritage. Sometimes we forget that chickens are jungle birds, that the vocalizations they make are there to help them survive in that environment. And really, all of these rules of etiquette are really just laws of the jungle. And under jungle law, every chicken flock has its own territory. They do, however, overlap on the edges, and all of this crowing back and forth is especially helpful near overlapping boundaries so that neighboring flocks never have to come into contact with each other unexpectedly. I am lucky enough to have witnessed this conflict avoidance firsthand. I used to keep multiple flocks, all free range, and these flocks had, on their own, developed separate territories for themselves. And when two flocks were out of sight of each other, but they were approaching one of these overlapping boundaries, the roosters in both flocks would crow nonstop and urgently. And then as one flock would move away from that boundary, the crowing between them would decrease gradually as that distance between them increased. Crowing for conflict avoidance also explains why roosters crow so much so early in the morning. They're all waking up, they're all getting started with their day, and they're all letting each other know exactly where they are and exactly where they're headed. So this crowing is actually just a matter of etiquette. I bet you didn't know that. I bet you didn't know that constantly crowing is actually quite polite. Now you just need to convince your neighbors of that. Rule number 7, no trespassing. You do not enter another flock's territory uninvited. That's the law of the jungle, and that's why it can be so difficult to integrate new birds into an already established flock. It's not because of the pecking order, that's a misunderstanding. It's because chickens are territorial. So from the established flock's point of view, they are being invaded, and they're not okay with that, just like you wouldn't be okay with that. And from the new chicken's point of view, they have just been dropped into hostile territory. they're in grave danger and they can't get out. So to understand how to successfully integrate chickens without violence, we need to look at how it's done in the wild and emulate that. And of course, this is the approach I take with all aspects of chicken keeping. It's called the jungle method. I always look at how Mother Nature intended for chickens to live in the jungle and the forest, and I take those principles and I apply them to my backyard flock. And in nature, when chickens want to integrate themselves into a new flock, they always start out on the margins of the territory. And then over several months, they interact more and more and more with the flock until they have fully integrated themselves. But it's a very slow, very gradual process. And I actually have seen this voluntary integration process in real life. I have this rooster Quiggles. He was a rescue. I'd originally planned on getting him his own flock of hens to live in their own territory, but he had a different idea and he wanted to integrate with one of my existing flocks. So he went to work and he successfully integrated himself into this pre-existing flock with zero bloodshed and no help from me. And this flock already had 2 roosters in it. The integration happened over a period of maybe 4 months, and it was exactly how the scientific literature describes it for chickens integrating in the wild. The problem for most of us, though, is that we either don't have the right setup to let our chickens integrate voluntarily, or we're trying to integrate multiple chickens who have already formed their own little flock. We're trying to integrate them into a pre-existing flock. And if they did have the choice to live with that pre-existing flock or stay in their own flock in a separate territory, they would choose their own flock and they would never voluntarily integrate. So for example, if you've raised a new batch of chicks and they're all very happy just living in their own little flock, they may never integrate with another flock if you give them the choice. But that doesn't work for most of us. That certainly doesn't work for me here. So in those cases, we still have to force the integration. However, that doesn't mean that we can't apply many of the principles we've learned from natural integration in the jungle. And I actually am working on putting together a training to teach you how to best replicate natural integration in our backyard conditions. I have tested out so many techniques to integrate chickens gradually and without violence, and I have a great system. So eventually I'll be sharing that in full, but in the meantime, if you do need some tips on integration now, I will link to a helpful video on that topic in the description below. On to rule number 8, chivalry always. There should be a picture of a rooster in the dictionary next to the word chivalry. Roosters just might be the most honorable, most polite animals in the entire world. They commonly do a lovely little dance for a hen in a polite request to mates. They tidbit for hens when they find food or anything exciting, really. They always give the best things away. They also protect the hens from strife within the flock, and as you've already learned, they will sacrifice their lives without hesitation just to save a single hen. One of the other things they do for hens on a daily basis is they seek out comfortable nesting spots for them. This is actually called cornering in the scientific literature. Because in the wild, whenever a hen leaves the flock to find a nesting spot, a male will accompany her and he'll find a nesting spot for her and he'll start tidbitting at it. She will come over and inspect it. Very often she will say no thank you and she'll keep going on. So he'll find another nesting spot and another until she finally accepts one of those spots or finds one of her own. And then the rooster will leave her so that she can lay her eggs in peace. Sometimes your roosters will even find a nesting spot for you and tidbit over it. You should take that as a huge compliment. They only do that for the people they love. Rule number 9, escorts required. Earlier I asked you if you knew why roosters crowed. Now I'm going to ask you if you know why hens sing the egg song. It sounds like this. sing the song a lot during the entire nesting process, before they lay, during laying, and especially after laying. This is one of those things where people in the backyard chicken space act like it's a big mystery and, oh, there are all these ideas, but nobody knows why hens sing the egg song. Well, if you follow the jungle method of chicken keeping, you know. Because this has been studied thoroughly in the wild, and although the egg song can have multiple meanings, it seems the primary meaning of the egg song is to attract a male escort. Remember in the wild that a hen will nest in a very isolated spot that can be quite far from the flock. The flock also could have moved quite a bit during her laying. In the wild, flocks roam over many acres of land. And as long as she is separated from that flock, she's in danger. And so she needs to find that flock ASAP. So when she belts out that egg song, a rooster will immediately come sprinting from the flock, find her, and he will then escort her back to the flock. That is the primary purpose of the egg song. It's just another example of roosters being chivalrous. Of course, in the smaller backyards of many domestic chickens today, the egg song is kind of obsolete, just like crowing is to some extent. But nobody has told the chickens that yet. However, if you have free-range chickens who are laying eggs far from the coop, you will still see this escort behavior. I had a hen, Hooter, who used to lay in my garage at my old house. She figured out how to use the cat door to get in, and when she was done laying, she would sing that egg song, and my rooster Rufio would come sprinting out to the garage, and he'd be belting out that same egg song at the top of his lungs. She'd come back out of that cat door, and he would escort her back to the flock.
Hi, buddy.
And the truth is, my garage wasn't very far from the coop at all. Hooter could have easily made it back to the coop with no problem at all. But it's those jungle instincts that are still in there. Hooter could not stop herself from belting out that egg song, and Rufio could not stop himself from running to get her. Rule number 10, don't you dare bother the hens. Roosters will tell you that their sole purpose for living is love. And if a rooster is lucky enough to have his own flocks of hens, he will obsessively love those hens. And whoever upsets those hens will pay a price. Unfortunately, sometimes that might be you. Just yesterday, my husband was trying to catch my hen Elvira to medicate her. She is very unwell and she needs this medication to survive, but she hates it. And so when Elvira saw my husband was coming for her yesterday, she went running away screaming, and Quiggles then intervened and attacked my husband, which is exactly what a rooster should do.
Bye-bye.
Quiggles in no way trusts my husband. In fact, I would say he actively dislikes him. That's probably an understatement. I'll explain why with rule number 11. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, find out what it means to me. R-E-S-P-E-C-T, take F-T-C-T. Here's something you may not know about chickens. They don't like discord. That means that when roosters fight, hens get really upset. When chicks fight, mothers intervene and stop them. And when hens fight, you'll commonly find a rooster will step in and break it up. And then, of course, if a rooster is ever aggressive to a hen, another rooster will immediately nip that in the bud.
Oh, boy. Yeah, I think she said no, Pearly.
And if you have any roosters who are bonded to you, they will protect you in that same way. It can actually be a real problem when I'm trying to work with a new rooster who's being aggressive. I'll be trying to train him with positive dog training techniques, which work like magic. But if one of my other roosters sees that new rooster being aggressive, he'll come and try to save me, which is sweet but counterproductive.
Oh, Rufio. I do thank you for trying to help, but I am trying to work with him. I know, you don't get that, do you?
So I told you I'd tell you why Quiggles hates my husband, and it's because in the past my husband has picked Quiggles up against his will and carried him around to try to show him dominance, which is just so disrespectful. From your chicken's point of view, it's being a bully. There are kind, respectful, and dare I say, fun ways of dealing with aggression if it does happen to surface in one of your roosters. I use positive dog training techniques. I have an article on that you can look at. But if you find that you are really struggling with rooster aggression and you just don't know what to do, please check out the website roovolution.org. This is a nonprofit organization run by Sarah and Jacob Franklin. They literally wrote the book on roosters, which I can't recommend enough. Everybody with a rooster should have this book. They also have so many resources to help you, from a Facebook group to one-on-one consults. I'm not getting anything from recommending them. I know everybody wonders that when you promote something. I do too, but I'm actually an annual donator to Roovolution myself. There's just nobody else out there who can help you learn respectful conflict resolution with your roosters the way that they can. And finally, the rule that guides all of chicken life, rule number 12, always share with friends. Chickens live their most joyful lives through sharing experiences with others, and sharing may mean dust bathing together.
Look, I'm gonna join in. Sorry, Stella, was that a little too weird even for you?
Sunbathing together. My arm is not quite long enough to push this out, but she is literally sunbathing on my lap. Preening together. Snuggling together. But most often, it means sharing food together. You've already seen how chickens share through tidbitting. But you can make this tendency work for your benefit too. One of the easiest and fastest ways that you can bond with your chickens is by feeding them out of your hands. You can have a feeder full of chicken feed next to you and the exact same feed in your hand, and your chickens will 100% swarm your hand and ignore that feeder. Even if they're not hungry, they get excited about eating out of your hand because they are just that social. Okay, so you've learned the basics of chicken etiquette here. There is so much more where this came from, but it's also important to know that following chicken etiquette isn't the only thing you need to be doing correctly to make your chickens happy. You also need to make sure the habitat they're living in, whether that be a multi-acre yard or a very tiny enclosed run, either way, you need to make sure that that habitat allows them to practice all of their innate jungle behaviors. And I found that most backyard chicken keepers are missing one really major thing in their chicken runs. You can find out exactly what that is in this video here. I will also link to it in the description below. Happy chickening!